So that I don't really have that loud a voice. So, I'm gonna welcome everybody and thank you for coming. This is a free monthly seminar series called Empowered Seniors Columbus, and we rotate topics every month, and we're either here or at the rec center. Today's topic is called Living, Dying, and Leaving a Legacy, and it's going to be chock full of really good information, and we've got some great panelists that I'm going to introduce you to here shortly. Age is merely the number of years that the world has been enjoying you, and this seminar is basically came about to help us learn how to embrace each moment and also to empower ourselves to live our lives to the fullest. I am Laurie Elsass. I am a licensed realtor with Keller Williams Capital Partners in Worthington. I have 2 separate designations. Hi, Manu, come on in. Oh, we need it. Oh, no, we got you. We got you. I have 2 separate designations that I've earned over the last several years that make me kind of specialized in working with 55 and older community. My senior real estate specialist designation through the National Association of Realtors, and also the certified senior housing professional through the Senior Real Estate Institute, which I call my grad school. And this brainchild of Empowered Seniors Columbus was a direct result of my personal experience with my folks. That's my dad. He's a retired U.S. Navy captain in the corner up there, and he was a very proud veteran. We lost him 2 years ago. But several years ago, about 6 years ago, he started having some significant health issues and was diagnosed with dementia. And I was living here, my brother was living in Florida, they were in Atlanta. We knew that wasn't gonna work. So we moved them up here to Dublin, actually, about 5 minutes away from me. And it was a very challenging experience. I learned a lot, even as a realtor who does lots and lots of real estate transactions, that this was a different beast. And it was different for a variety of reasons, just from a physical standpoint, obviously, but from an emotional standpoint as well. And it really kind of led me on a personal and professional journey to doing what I'm doing now, which is focusing on working with later in life real estate transitions. Today's seminars, we're going to explore key aspects of intentional living, preparing for life's transitions, and ensuring your values and wishes endure for generations to come. From estate planning and end-of-life considerations to meaningful ways to pass on wisdom and wealth, you're going to gain insights to help you navigate these important conversations with clarity and confidence. And I'm going to introduce our panelists today. I'm going to start over there to my left. That is Mary Beth DeSantis, and she is with Capital City Hospice. Next to her is Steve Brown, and he is with Snyder Funeral Homes. And then I have Jackie Collins to my left, and Jackie is the partner with Collins and Cruz, and they specialize in elder law, from estate planning to VA issues, and all sorts of elder care law. So basically and I know what else I need to do. In front of you guys, you have a packet of information, lots of information. This piece is just your note-taking, and it allows you to kind of follow along with the slides. And each slide will be broken down into 2 separate myths that we're going to talk about and find out whether they're true or false. And you can take notes along the side. And then underneath that, there's a brochure, a big one with my big picture on it. That's just a little bit of information on me. It's also got a copy of the schedule for the remainder of the seminars and the seminar topics and locations for this year, all the way through December. I think we've got some really good and interesting topics that we're going to cover. And then there's also a feedback form, which I really, really do want your honest feedback on the content, the presentation, how we can make it better, suggestions for other topics that you might be interested in having a seminar on. And then there's also a half sheet of paper that says hello. And basically, that is a registration form. And I'm going to be giving away a $25 Panera gift card today. I'm going to put everybody's registration forms into the basket. I'm going to come around at the end and collect them. And then I'm going to draw a name from the basket, and you get to go home with a Panera gift card.
So Lori, can I put my name in like 20 times?
Yes, you may. We're both 60, so we qualify. So I'm going to start, and we may kind of get focused on some of these myths a little bit longer. If we don't get through everything, like about halfway through, I'm going to maybe speed us up a little bit so that we can cover as much as possible. And as you guys know, this is an open seminar. You guys have a question, just raise your hands. Usually it works best if you raise your hands with the person, the speaker that has been talking, so that you know that question is going to be directed to them. But this is open policy, and we're happy to answer questions as we go. So the first myth is that my life insurance policy is going to take care of my funeral expenses.
Oh, want me to field that one?
Yes.
All right. Well, again, welcome. Did every single person here wake up because you knew you were going to talk about funeral planning?
And hospice.
Right? So what we'll do in the next few minutes is just try to make this a little bit more informational. And I'll kind of keep it somewhat brief, but please, if you have questions along the way or at the end, I'll stay as long as you need to answer any specific questions. Is that fair?
That is
So I'm heading into my 14th year in this profession as a funeral planner, and I did sell life insurance prior to that. So the first myth is actually a good one, because a lot of times people will want to get their funeral plans in place, but they'll say, I want to use my life insurance to pay for it. Absolutely understood. However, usually not a great idea, because with life insurance, which is a wonderful thing, if you have it, it's great for those who are left behind to pay any medical bills or uncertain things, or creating a standard of living for them. However, some people think life insurance is there to pay for their funeral when that time comes. Not necessarily true, for several reasons. One, life insurance is an asset, and I think you're going to hear this shortly, but heaven forbid if Medicaid becomes an issue. When Medicaid becomes an issue, a person's life insurance policy is an asset and goes to the state or to the facility that's caring for them. So they lose their life insurance benefits. The other thing life insurance does not do is it does not guarantee the funeral costs. So a good funeral home, if someone funds through them, well, actually you won't fund it through the funeral home, it has to go to a third party who holds those funds. They are protected, they are irrevocable, which means no one can touch the money that's been set aside for your funeral plan. And it guarantees and locks in the price. So with life insurance, you may have a $10,000 life policy, which might be enough for your funeral today, but you live another 10 or 20 years, the funeral costs will have doubled or tripled. And most of the time, the actual cost of the funeral exceeds the life insurance value. And so your family is now burdened with, one, no life insurance at all, or two, not enough. And they are still burdened with the cost of paying for your funeral. So that's a hopefully brief on how the life insurance does not necessarily work for funeral planning.
The next myth is my family knows I want the cheapest funeral available, so that's what they're going to do.
That's great. And that's normal, it's natural, because people are like, I don't want to make a fuss, I want to keep it simple. But the truth is, and it's hard for a lot of people to talk about, but the truth is, the funeral is for the living. It's for those left behind. And if we don't create some type of a memorial service, some way for them to gather, it doesn't have to be at a funeral home, but it's important that the loved ones left behind have a chance to get together and support each other and be there for each other. And so going as cheap as possible, you can do it, but it doesn't leave any room for any type of memorial service, funeral service, or gathering of any kind. And so now the family is going to be left with a void or having to pay for something themselves that we didn't give them up front. The other thing that's important about that, true or false, half the people that go to your funeral will not know you personally. It's true. They are there to support those left behind, kids, grandkids, friends. So that's another reason why it's so important to have some type of remembrance service for you. Yeah, very good.
So, how much does a funeral cost?
Great question. You can have bare bones direct cremation for as little as $2,000. And you can have a full burial for $22,000. So it's kind of like buying a car, if you will, in that what kind of things do you want to have? Do you want services? An urn versus a casket, cremation versus burial. All of those things factor into what that cost would be. Average, with a service, about $6,000 for a cremation and about $11,000 for a funeral, because you've got a casket, vault, some higher priced items. So yeah, if you have ballpark.
So the 11,000 would include a service?
Yeah, so the 11,000 would be a service with a casket and a vault, and yes, all of that.
But not like a after gathering?
It would, it probably would, it should, yes. It's everything involved with a burial, funeral, with the exception, now you've got a cemetery. So you got a cemetery plot and maybe a marker. Those are additional costs.
How much do those cost?
They can be anywhere from $2,000 to $5,000 to have a plot, depending on where you want that to be. Yeah, good
Okay.
question. Yep,
Yeah.
thank you.
I just have no idea.
That's that, and most people don't, and that's why the planning process is so important, because it lets you decide what it is that you want, but what it is that your family needs to have in that moment to heal and move forward eventually, right? And so having those costs up front allow you to take that emotional and financial burden off of your loved ones. Yep, very good. The other thing real quick, people overspend on funerals when there's no planning because of the grief and the emotion and wanting to do something that maybe you don't need or want. So doing all that ahead of time removes all of that off of the burden of your family as well.
The next myth is, I can donate my body to science and my family won't have to worry about anything.
Sort of, kind of. Body donation is a thing. Couple of things to think about with body donation, and this is what we talk to our families about. With the body donation, for example, if it's Ohio State, the cost to bring that person in is almost negligible, honestly. There's really not much to it. The challenge and the discussion we have to have is having a plan B. If that time comes and your body is not eligible for donation, then there's going to have to be some type of service required to get you into a funeral home's care. That's going to be a little bit more expensive. So you can have a body donation for $800. That's coming to get you and getting you to Ohio State. But if that's not the case, now you're looking at several $1,000s more to be taken care of. So even if body donation is your wish, and it would be duly noted, having a backup plan is important. And it's also important to know that when somebody funds their funeral, it's irrevocable, which means no one can touch the money. It's not an asset that can be attached to anyone buying it. And if you've got body donation and you're accepted, and you paid for a service that you don't need, that money goes back to the estate. Okay, so it's not money lost.
The next one is 60% of veterans believe their funeral services will be covered because they served our country.
Do we have any veterans with us today? Thank you for your service. I do spend quite a bit of time talking with our veteran friends and family, spouses, about the benefits. A national cemetery, well, first of all, the answer to the question is the VA pays very, very little. Very little. Somewhere between $300 and $762, which is a very bizarre number. And that's reimbursement. However, for our veterans, if they're in a national cemetery, like Rittman, which is up near Akron, Dayton, of course Arlington, those are national cemeteries. The cost of the plot, the marker, the open and closing, which is digging the hole, those are all covered. There is no cost. However, if our veteran family and friends are buried in a public or private cemetery, they still have to pay for those things. The only things that we will make sure are free are a bronze plaque, a folded flag, honor guard. But our job is to work with the family on where that final resting place would be and take care of everything. All of the paperwork, getting everything done, that's the funeral home's responsibility. But the VA does not pay for very much. That is a good one.
Jackie, is there anything that we need to add to what Steve said?
No.
Okay. My estate will take care of my funeral expenses.
It's possible if the estate has been set up, and we're gonna, I think, hear about this a little bit more clearly. But I would say the challenge with having the estate do everything is the truth is when that time comes, the funeral home is gonna need to be paid pretty much immediately. It could take a amount of time until the estate can release funds that have been held aside and are available, if they are available. And so it still could put the family in a position where they still have to front the money and then wait to get reimbursed, if that's the case, depending on how the estate has been set up. And whether or not the estate is revocable or irrevocable, which again, has a lot to do with the availability of those funds.
The next one we kind of already talked about, so about the need for a visitation or service, so we're gonna just keep moving along. Getting older means becoming less useful. And I actually am gonna talk on that just a smidge here. That is absolutely false. You know, as I have aged personally, I think I'm pretty doggone smart and wise, and you know, my kids still don't listen to me. I mean, literally, I have the world's best advice, and inevitably, they always choose not to follow it. Whatever, you know, you're gonna have something to deal with. Don't do it this way, but have at it. But plugging in, you know, in your community, there are ways that we can, even if you're, you know, when you're retired, even before you're retired, and giving back to the community in a meaningful way. And that can look a lot of different ways, I think, is also another way that we can contribute still at our age. You know, I started real estate later in life. You know, I had a whole nother career, you know, professional career for, you know, 20 years. And this was a later in life, and I wish I had done it 40 years ago, but oh well, c'est la vie, you know. But so I do think that we are still, you know, as long as our minds are sharp and we've got the energy to get out and go and do something, I absolutely think that that's false. And also, the second one is, as you age, you aren't interested in or can't understand technology. While it's challenging, and while I would say there's no way I am as technologically savvy as my 28-year-old son, you know, I can still do a lot. All right, so I did have some challenge today getting set up with the slides. I was a little embarrassed, but you know, hey, there are tech people here that help me. But yeah, it's a challenge, and yes, you know, your kids and your grandkids are communicating in a much different way you know, we're used to communicating. And I know my mom gets frustrated and she's like, well, I don't live with my phone next to me, you know, so I didn't see your text that you sent 2 days ago, you know. But she still texts, you know, so I do think that that's also false. I think that, you know, we can be as tech savvy as we set our minds to be. And so that's a little bit of a myth as well. I'm gonna skip the top one. I'm gonna go straight to my longevity planning is complete when I've done my will and estate plan. And that is gonna be to you, Jackie.
I always say, well, your will and your estate plan is whatever you chose, whether you chose a will or a trust or to do nothing. You really need to think about other things like long-term care insurance if you can still get it and afford it. And talk to your family. What we do a lot of crisis cases where people have done no planning whatsoever, and they have a fall or they have an accident or they get sick real fast. They're in the hospital. They go to short-term rehab. They don't get well enough to go home, so that's usually when we get the call. Starting tomorrow, it's $15,000 a month. What are we going to do? We can't afford that. And most of the time, you know, they don't have anything done. So a lot of times I'm telling family, when we're pre-planning, you have so many more options than in a crisis. So when you're pre-planning, your estate plan at the bare minimum should be your last will and testament, your healthcare power of attorney and living will, and your financial power of attorney. Your financial power of attorney, most likely, in my opinion, is the most important document out of all of those. And that's kind of the bare minimum. From there, you can choose to try to avoid probate or protect your assets proactively by using a trust or revocable or irrevocable trusts. But mostly you just need to talk to your family about what you want done if A or B or C happens. And when we have families come in, we try to have not just the parents, we try to talk to the kids too, at least once, so no one's surprised about what's being done. And tell them, you know, if something happens, we know what their wishes are, so just come to us and we can help explain that to you. That way, if there ever is a crisis, you already have the bare minimum done, people can act on your behalf, they're not scrambling, talking guardianships or any of that other stuff. You might even know what type of building you want to go to, what building you want to go to, if you have to go to assisted living or memory care. You've toured them. And again, it's much better to do it ahead of time, proactively, than it is to do it reactively. You have so many choices on the table, because if it's a crisis, we help people find a place, and you know, you're kind of at the mercy of who has a bed available and what you can afford. Whereas we're starting to get a few more pre-planners that are close to a crisis. Even if you're 6 months out from the crisis and you're planning now, you could at least tour those facilities, get on a wait list if there is one, and when the time comes, you can go ahead, go in proactively. But so many people nowadays don't do that. They wait till a crisis occurs. So.
And just to tag team with you a minute, and in regards to hospice, we are seeing the cost of facilities, long-term care, ALs are going up every month. It's crazy, and where it has gotten. I mean, it used to be for long-term care, 30 days, you could probably do around 8,000, and now it's pretty much 12 to 15 for you, out of pocket. That's 100% out of pocket unless you have a long-term care policy that will benefit or you're Medicaid.
My mom has been in a senior living community for 6 years now, 2 different ones, and I would bet she has had her rent increase at least annually every single year since she moved in. So yeah, pre-planning is a paramount importance. Will you touch, Jackie, really quickly on the difference between a revocable and an irrevocable trust?
Well, revocable trust protects you from probate. You're in charge, you're the trustee. They use your social security number as their ID number for the trust. So if we use that a lot when there's blended families. I always use the Brady Bunch example, Mike and Carol. You know, Mike died with, they both died with a will, and Mike dies first, and Carol's left standing. She's free to rewrite her will and write the boys right out of it after Mike's gone. With the revocable trust, you can protect from things like that happening. Or if your kids have issues, you know, addiction issues, you can make sure they prove their sobriety before they get what they take under the trust. all kinds of things. And then usually revocable trust becomes irrevocable after the death of the first spouse, so then you don't have to worry about the surviving spouse changing anything and everything after you're gone. Whether they just do out of their own accord, or they have a third party that nobody knows at the time of your death, but they come in because there was a neighbor and their undue influence on them and things like that. Irrevocable trust protects your stuff from long-term care, assisted living, memory care, or nursing. So if you put your assets, the assets that can go into an irrevocable trust, and you stay healthy for at least 5 years, because Medicaid has a 5-year look back, then let's say you put it in there now, and 7 years from now you need to go to the nursing home, whatever's in that trust is untouchable, provided we still have Medicaid.
Thanks. Staying in my home at all costs proves I'm still independent. I'm gonna touch on that, and again, everybody, their first choice is to stay in their home as long as they possibly can. At all costs, it becomes tricky and it becomes difficult for your family. My husband is currently going through a scenario with his parents up in Canton, who are, in the last 6 months, it's just been so dramatic, the change in both of them, but in particularly with his mom, that they are not leaving the house, and it is not safe for them anymore, and it is heartbreaking. And my husband is an only child, which makes it even more difficult because he's solo. He doesn't have a team of siblings that can support him and, sort of have a team approach with mom and dad. And I'm worried about my husband's health right now. He is having massive stress issues, scary ones like tightness in the chest, shortness of breath. We're calling the cardiologist. And when we try and explain that to his parents, they say we want to die in our home. And Greg basically looks at them and said, well, make room for me, because I'm probably going to die alongside with you, because it's that stressful. They are, it's very, so staying in your home is great, and as long as you are safe in your home, that's also great. But as soon as you're not safe, then your family tries to help you make the right decision so that you are safe, because if you fall and break a hip and you are laying on the floor and your spouse isn't strong enough to get you up, and if your spouse has cognitive issues and can't remember to call 911, or you're a daughter or a son or a neighbor, and I've been in situations where that's actually happened, and the spouse that fell on the floor was there for 12 hours until a neighbor happened to knock on the door because a package had been sitting out all day. That is very scary, and that is some of the things that you need to consider about when you say I want to stay in my house at all costs. Remember, it might cost your loved ones something as well. The next myth is enrolling in hospice means giving up on living. Mary Beth.
No, it does not. It means you want to live the best of your life that you have left. So you were brought into this world with dignity. You deserve to leave the world with dignity. So therefore, that does not mean you're giving up. It just means I don't want to go to the hospital 52 times. I don't want more chemo, any kind of curative treatment. You say, I just want to be comfortable. Does it mean you're dying tomorrow? Absolutely not. We graduate people from hospice all the time. Somebody might have an exasperation. They might fall and break their hip. A lot of times that will kind of impose decline on you. Can you recover from that? Yes. Can you get back to your baseline prior? Yes. Is it fewer and far between? Yes, depending on your age, but you can get back. We get you back to the point where you do not qualify anymore, we will take you off. We call it graduate from hospice. And then we're there for you when you're ready to go back on. We get that a lot, and it never means you're giving up. It just means you want to live a better life than what you're living, because you're probably not having the best type of quality.
Hospice means leaving my home for an inpatient facility and giving up my primary care doctor.
No, we provide hospice wherever you call home, whether it is your primary residence that you've lived for 50 years, whether it's an assisted living, an independent living, a skilled nursing facility. We provide wherever you call that home, your loved one's home. You live with one of your adult children, we will provide hospice for you there. It does not matter where you live. And people now don't want to die in the hospital. They want to die where they love seeing their loved ones or their surroundings. So, no, we don't have an inpatient unit. There is only one in the city, and that is a freestanding Kobacker house that you have to have met a certain qualification to be able to get in there. And they don't have very many beds. So think about, in my company, I have over 500 patients on a daily census. They have like 24 beds. So there's not a lot of room for that. So that's just an option that you have, but very few people get in. So we can provide it wherever. And there's different levels of care, but that's another topic for another day, because that can get into a lengthy discussion. And you do not have to give up your primary care doctor. So let's say, for instance, we receive a hospice referral, and it comes, you always have to have an evaluation order from a doctor, no matter what. They have to signify that if your disease process follows the journey of 6 months or less, then you qualify for hospice. Is that always the case? No, but there's many qualifications and criteria that Medicare looks at. We call the primary care doctor that you go to. If you have a relationship you've had for years and you want to still keep that, we ask the doctor. Most generally, they'll say, yes, I want to follow. If it is usually a primary care physician that lives outside of city proper, they tend to follow more than the ones who are in very busy practices, because they don't want to be called in the middle of the night to give a comfort med. So they say, no, let us know at the end of the journey, but have your hospice doc follow. But we always give that to your primary care doc. That's their choice of what they want to do. Hospice is not expensive. It costs you $0. Hospice is a service paid for by Medicare and Medicaid and private insurance. If you are under Medicare age, then sometimes private insurance or might be a copay. We usually get that waived through the insurance companies and through our negotiated contracts, or we write it off and we do not charge up to you. So that's important to us, but that's very, very few cases. Most generally, it's Medicare and Medicaid.
Thank you. That's redundant.
Question?
Yes.
Go ahead, Manu.
What's your company's name?
Capital City Hospice.
Capital City.
Yep, right there on the
Manu,
top.
it's in on one of the pages where all the panelists are listed with their email and their phone numbers.
Is that yellow cap?
And yes, there are marketing materials at your seat
Okay.
for everybody that is presenting today on the panel.
And usual, the little sizes are so small that you are bound to miss that.
I'm sorry. The next myth is all I need to create a will is to write down my wishes on notebook paper and sign it.
I mean, technically that could work, but really you need to have at least 2 witnesses, disinterested parties, so no one that could take under the will. So if you have your son witness, and they were supposed to get 70%, and the other kid was supposed to get 30%, then the son's only probably gonna get 50-50. They would only take as if there was no will, if they were one of the witnesses. So this comes up a lot when people use like LegalZoom or some of the software you can buy at Barnes & Noble or Costco or something like that. I've seen wills come in where they're notarized. So someone goes through the program, prints it out, signs it in front of a notary, you're good to go. Now, notarized wills are not recognized in Ohio. Again, it has to be 2 disinterested parties to witness it. Not just one, and then one signs, 3 days later, or any of the little problems we see, so. But technically, if you were to write down your wishes and it was signed by 2 different interested parties on a napkin, you could submit that as an original will. Now what happens after that would be up for discussion, depending on, do you have an only child, do you have 5 kids that don't get along, what would happen next would be interesting.
What do you mean by notarized agreements are not recognized? That's what you say just now.
By the state of Ohio.
Right, notarized wills are not recognized, it has to be in front of 2 witnesses.
Notarized, mere notarized, but it has to have witnesses also.
No notary at all, just witnesses for the will. Everything else can be notarized. Your healthcare power of attorney, living will, financial power of attorney, all that.
Yeah, I've been a notary for the last about 10 years now.
Mm.
So, no, I'm willing to learn, you see. So that way I'm glad that I heard you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome.
If I might add into that just real quick from the pre-need side, because I use this example a lot when I'm talking to families, is somebody might say, oh, I have everything written down. I use my mother-in-law as an example. She was very organized, had a thick red notebook with all kinds of information in there. But when it came to the pre-need, there's a lot more information that we want to gather, because the goal is when that time comes, years from now, the family is not making any decisions or trying to find any information. It's truly taken care of. If you have it all written down somewhere, that's okay. But in her example, we had all of her wishes on file. It was all taken care of, funded ahead of time. And when she did pass a couple of years ago, we could not find that red folder. She had put it somewhere and we couldn't find. My wife and sister-in-law couldn't find it. But she had the wherewithal to have her funeral plans and her wishes fully recorded and written down with everything she wanted. So that was a huge relief for my wife and her sister. Yeah.
That's a moment of
having
panic.
it written down doesn't necessarily mean it'll be where it needs to be when that time comes. Yeah.
I do not have enough money to set up a trust.
Well, we hear that all the time. We set up trust just for people's house. They may be cash poor, but have a nice house that's worth $100,000 or so. We've set up trust for people with $50,000. It really is just up to you and what your different reasons are for setting up a trust. Whether your kids don't get along, so you want to make sure they don't fight with each other after you're gone, and that everybody gets their distribution, even if it's not a lot. If you're setting up a trust, like I said, or I think I said this earlier, the most common trust we set up, people get 2 different trusts. They get an irrevocable trust and they get a revocable trust. A lot of times they'll just put their primary residence in the irrevocable trust, because nothing about your life changes at all when that happens, because it's not liquid. I won't get into the ins and outs of trust and how they work, where most of you would probably fall asleep. And then they use the revocable trust for their liquid assets. And it makes it easier after you pass. But it doesn't really matter how much you have. I do say there's a threshold. If you have $20,000, $25,000 or less, you probably don't need a trust. There's other vehicles to do it. And then with all that being said, not everybody needs a trust. I know there's a lot of our competitors out there that will pay for a nice steak dinner for you to go to and give you a seminar, and you're going to leave buying a trust whether you needed one or not, because that's how I have those advertising companies come to me all the time, and for each steak dinner that they put on, it's probably around $300 to $500 worth of cost for the firm to put those on. So not everybody needs a trust. You can avoid probate with a will, which doesn't make sense, which I think I'll get into in a little bit, but not everyone needs a trust. And then the Medicaid, so at Collins and Cruz, we do, like I said earlier, a lot of Medicaid crisis planning. Someone comes to us, they gotta go to assisted living, or a nursing home, or memory care, usually at the last minute. And I always tell people, if you don't remember anything else, if it's the last minute and you're married, and there's a healthy spouse at home, we can still protect around 98% of your assets, even at the last minute, and you've done nothing. And that's taking into consideration the 5-year look back. If you're single, we can probably protect 20% of your, 20 to 50% of your assets. It drops significantly. There's not as many exemptions that we can go for that healthy spouse. When you're married, the house is completely off the table. They can't touch it. So that's a very common myth. If your healthy spouse is staying in the home, they can't touch it. Now, common mistake people do is they'll go to an estate planning attorney that will tell them, well, it's completely exempt, they can't do it. Let's say the husband goes on to Medicaid in the nursing home for a year, passes away. The house was owned jointly. What happens is, you don't know it, but there's something called Medicaid estate recovery. Ohio is one of the most aggressive states. Ohio and New York are the top 2. So when you go, if the healthy spouse lives there and never needs Medicaid, and she passes and is going through probate to go to the kids or whoever, Medicaid estate recovery will pop up and be like, okay, well, against dad's 50% value of the home, you have to pay us back what we paid for another nursing home. So they essentially get a lien against the value of the home. So when you're married and there's a healthy spouse, there's a few extra steps we do to make sure that doesn't happen. When you're single, a lot of people end up in the nursing home, and the nursing home will say, well, don't pay an attorney to do the Medicaid application, we'll do it for free. Like what I said earlier, what they do is they just spend you down to the Medicaid asset limit of $2,000. They don't save that to 50%, 20, 50% for you at all. And a lot of times what they'll do to make their life easier, they'll say, well, you don't even have to sell your home, because that's what people want to hear. They want to hear that you don't have to sell your home and you're going to get better, you're going to get to go home. In the 13 years of doing this, I've only had one person go from the nursing home safely. I've had people leave and they end up right back in the hospital within 2 or 3 days, and then back into the nursing home. So with that you're in the nursing home, you've exempted it, because that's what the nursing home told you to do. Every month that goes by, just like that healthy spouse scenario, the government's getting a lien against the value of your loan or your home. You pass away, the Ohio Attorney General's office is going to subcontract out to a debt collector, which I don't think should be allowed because they're very aggressive, because they get their payments solely on how much they can recover from you, which doesn't incentivize them to deal with you. And then they're gonna send you a letter. So when you sell that house through probate, you're gonna have to pay off this $100,000 lien. There's nothing you can do about it. You can try to appeal for hardship and all this other stuff, but if you do that ahead of time, usually the best case scenario, if you're entering the nursing home and you're single, is to sell the house as quickly as possible and try to protect that 20 to 50% of the home's value up front, rather than trying to protect something on the back. Because I always tell people, I say that a lot, but people don't listen. The nursing home's the nursing home's advocate. They're not your advocate. The Medicaid caseworker who might be super nice, or the VA caseworker who loves you and you like talking to them and blah, 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 they're the VA's advocate. They're not your advocate. Medicaid's Medicaid's advocate. You need your own independent advocate to be able to advocate for you. And our own interest is protecting you, your care, and whatever assets your goal is to protect.
And I will tell you, in hospice, we see this all the time. And we dealt with Jackie's office in regards to, because somebody will have a crisis and needs a place fast. And there's a lot of places you can't get in. So you want the nicer place, you may be in the not so nice place, because it's the only one that can take you.
It's the only option you have.
Mm-hmm. So we see it all the time, and I will tell you, hospice, you get a social worker, we are there for you, because we're the ones that would be calling them saying, oh my gosh, this is happening at the nursing home, because we usually find out about it sooner than the families do. because they're like, they're running out of money, they're not, and it's a problem. So, it's a bad thing, and unfortunately, I'm too old to lobby, or I would go back in the lobbying world and lobby for all of you, because a lot of you are gonna have to stay home, not gonna be able to afford it. Unless you use these guys and do great.
I was gonna say, it's great having people like Mary Beth and Jackie around for support for the pre-need side to the funeral home as well. Because with Medicaid, I probably see one a week of a Medicaid spend down, where it's usually the adult kids who are trying to take care of mom or dad, who are running out of money and they need Medicaid in order to be in an assisted living facility, for example. And so they'll get their pre-arrangements in place and funded irrevocably. Even if they have 6 months to live, and that 5-year look back, the irrevocable funeral policy trust cannot be touched. It's an exempt asset now. And so when that time does come, regardless of how long it's been or how short it's been, the funds go to the funeral home to pay for the wishes of that individual when they die. And there is a document that we have, if there's any money left over, and there almost never is, but if there is a document that allows that money to not have to go back to the state, but can be used for a family member for certain limited items in their pre-arrangements. So there's some rules we won't get into, like you can't throw in $10,000 because you want to fly Uncle Joe in for the funeral. There's some things that you can't do, but you can do a lot in your funeral plan to protect those funds and help qualify for Medicaid.
Thanks. I have to use up all my assets in order to be on Medicaid.
No, like I said before, the asset limit for Medicaid is $2,000 for the sick spouse or sick individual. You can choose to spend down all the way to nothing. That's what the nursing home and assisted living and memory care would like you to do. But you don't have to. That's where we can try to preserve somewhat of a legacy so you can leave something for your family rather than all going to a corporation. Especially if you have a spouse, we deal with people, there's a 15-year age gap. One spouse is 80, the other is 65. If you spend all your money down, how's the 65-year-old going to do? They're going to go on a Medicaid sooner and be on it longer than the 85-year-old ever will, or 80-year-old. So just preserving that extra goes a long way. You don't have to spend it all down. Buildings will tell people that, but it's just not true.
It's against the law to transfer away property to qualify for Medicaid.
It's not against the law, but the 5-year Medicaid looks back 5 years, and they use any transfers against you. And it's not just a 5-year penalty. It's based on the dollar amount you've given away. So if you transfer a $200,000 house, they'll say, and that's your only misgiving or whatever, they'll say, okay, that's fine, but we're not going to pay for your care at assisted living or the nursing home that's about a 20-month penalty. For every, let's just say $7,900 you give away is a 1-month penalty. And that what would you call it, that algorithm, there's some more numbers that go into it, but it's roughly $7,900 a month is a 1-month penalty. That goes up every year usually. So there you would file for Medicaid, you'd get the denial, we're expecting a denial, and 20 months later you'd have to file again and say, we served our sentence. It's time for the state to start paying. The problem is, how are you paying for those 20 months? Because you've given your asset away, or you've given cash away. So you have to plan ahead for that, and that's what we do. We utilize the 5-year look back to our advantage. So if you have $200,000 and you're single, let's say, we figure out how much we can give away. So let's say it's half. We give away $100,000 to a trust or to your only child. We file for Medicaid and say, hey, Medicaid, we gave away $100,000 yesterday. That's within the last 5 years, you need to penalize us. They'll say that's a 18-ish month penalty. With the other $100,000, we use that to pay through the 18 months. At the end of the 18 months, that other $100,000 is gone. We apply for Medicaid, say, hey, we spent down our $100,000. We get to keep the other $100,000. It's time for you to start paying. So we figure how much we can give away while still leaving enough behind to get through that penalty. When you're married, I don't wanna get into the details of this, but if you had $200,000, Medicaid just splits that down the middle. If it's cash, they don't care whose name it's under, or if it's been under, the spouse's name for 30 years. They just put it down the middle, assign $100,000 to each spouse. The healthy spouse can keep up to $150-some thousand. So in this scenario, they keep all $100,000. And the sick spouse can only keep $2,000. So they have $98,000. That's usually where the building tells you to spend down $98,000, and we'll apply for Medicaid for you for free. You spent $98,000 for a Medicaid application. If I charged that, I wouldn't have to work much every year. So we can turn that $98,000 into income for the healthy spouse, is how we protect it. Because the healthy spouse's income in a married couple is 100% protected. The sick spouse, all of their income goes away. So if we can turn that income and protect those assets for the healthy spouse, that helps, because you're gonna have this joint income household go down to a single income household overnight, as soon as we get them approved for Medicaid. Because all their income minus, they get a $50 allowance each month when they're on Medicaid in a nursing home or assisted living, and that's it. So if we can save, especially if that person was the breadwinner, it can be pretty traumatic.
Thanks. Medicaid rules say that I can gift $17,000 per year.
We hear this all the time, and people argue with me all the time. That's a tax law, and I think it's up to 18,000. I think I read that, or I never know, because I tell people it doesn't matter what the amount is, it's tax, gift tax exemption. You can give a person $16,000, $17,000, $18,000 a year, and they won't pay taxes on it. And that's kind of even not wholly true too, because if you give someone $25,000, and that extra $8,000, you're over the gift tax limit, they're not paying taxes on that. It just applies to their lifetime exemption. So they wouldn't pay taxes until they hit their lifetime exemption limit, which is $13 million. And it's probably just gonna go up. Because those are set to expire, I think at the end of the year, but they're gonna renew under the bill that just went through. It's a way to wealth transfer for extremely wealthy people. So it has nothing to do with Medicaid. Medicaid goes, oh yeah, you can give away $18,000 a year per person. No, they would count that as a gift. Taxes wise, you're fine, but Medicaid, anything is a gift for the most part.
And then I have to wait 5 years after giving anything away to get Medicaid.
Correct. Medicaid has a 5-year look back, so you just be penalized. So like I said earlier, if you gave away, if you paid for grandson's college and it was $50,000 and Medicaid found that, then that would be a 6-month penalty, and then you would just have to figure out how to pay for those 6 months. It might not be all 5 years, but if you're planning ahead, especially with second properties, your primary residence is exempt and we can protect it. What people don't know and are terrible, it's just terrible to go through with people. We had a lot of them. We had a good spell where we had like 4 in 2 months, where Michigan lake houses, grandfather built that, he gave it to my dad, he's gonna give it to us. Well, that's a second home. It's worth $250,000. Some of them are worth a lot more. All Medicaid sees that, you have your primary residence, they see that second property as cash in the bank. They see it as liquid, even though it's not. So you could spend you could have another $1 million, spend that to zero. If you still have that house, they would say no. That's not your primary residence. You have to sell it and then try to protect it. Or, if you give it away to protect it, you have to have enough cash to get through that expected penalty for doing so. So if you have second properties, rental properties, it's essentially you get those into a Medicaid asset protection trust immediately, so you get that 5 years ago.
Now, can you just do a transfer on death?
No, because you never get on the Medicaid because it's still in your name.
Oh, okay.
Transferring death only avoids probate.
Mm-hmm.
So,
It wouldn't help anyway.
yeah. So,
If I put my property in my spouse's name, I will be eligible for Medicaid.
I mean, if you have a spouse, that property is exempt, but it doesn't really matter. They look at everything. And where I talked about the Medicaid estate recovery, they could only come, if you don't get it out of the sick spouse's name, they could only come after 50% of that house's value. So the state can come back after anything the sick person had in their name at the time of their death. So if you exempted the house, or you exempted, the sick spouse's IRA is technically exempt. And you exempted that, and it was still in their name at their time of their passing, the state could come after it. So,
Once I'm in a nursing home, it's too late to do Medicaid planning.
no, not at all, it's just a crisis space. We could do everything I just talked about. If you've been in the nursing home a year, I feel terrible, because that's 1 year, that's probably $200,000 of money you burned through that we probably could have protected
Saved.
most of it. So, a lot of times people will come with me, a lot of times buildings that we work with will send people to us when they're almost out of money. And I have a separate company that helps buildings, and my whole goal is you need to send people to us early. Because if you wait till they run out of money and they've been giving money away or paying for juniors' college, and then they have this long penalty period, they're in the nursing home, and you can kick them out if you want, because it's technically a month-to-month lease at that point, but that never makes the nursing home look good. So, it's key to do it as soon as you find out you can do it, especially for nursing homes since they're so expensive here.
I can't keep my income if my spouse is receiving Medicaid for nursing home costs.
The healthy spouse keeps all of their income. There are ways if you know what you're doing. So if you're doing the application on your own, if the sick spouse is the breadwinner and they make $5,000 a month, and the healthy spouse only makes $500 a month, which is kind of actually common, and the healthy or the sick spouse, that $5,000 goes to the nursing home, all of it. If you don't do any extra planning, all but $50. So together they made $5,500. $5,000 was the sick spouse, $500 for the healthy spouse. All of a sudden that healthy spouse just has $500 to live on. Well, the state doesn't want that. There's spousal impoverishment limits. The state wants the healthy spouse to at least have $2,500 a month of income. So in that algorithm of the sick spouse, you would take their $5,000, you give $2,500 to the healthy spouse. In this case, you give $2,000 because she already makes $500 to them, and then the rest would go to the nursing home. And that's the bare minimum the caseworker should do. They don't always do that. You can actually ask for a maximum. The maximum is like $3,800. That's a good amount. Instead of having $2,500, you would have $3,800 of income. But you have to know the caseworker will never approve that because they're not allowed to. You actually have to file for a state hearing separately and prove why you need that extra $1,300 a month. Which nobody knows to do that, and Medicaid's not giving you legal advice. Hey, by the way, if you do this, you could save a lot more money. They're just processing your application. And a lot of times I see people come to me and they don't know this, and the caseworker is overwhelmed. It's usually not done on purpose. They won't even give the spouse the minimum. So the spouse has been living on $1,000 a month, somehow about ready to lose their home because they can't afford property taxes and things like that. I'm like, well, you should be getting $1,500 more from your husband's income. And it's just awful.
Okay. I do want to ask Mary Beth if you could just give us a brief kind of overview of once you receive a referral, sort of what happens and how does that process play out in Capital City Hospice?
It's very easy, actually. We take care of everything after you call us. Well, there's different scenarios. So let's say you're in the hospital. Hospital sends us over the referral. We reach out to the POA. If they are their own signer and you have all your mental faculties and you can sign for yourself, you will be the one to sign. But typically it's your POA. So we set an appointment, and this all happens in a quick amount of time. We are probably one of the quickest because we're gonna be there when you get home to wherever you call your home. So they're gonna send the referral, or your nursing home's gonna send the referral, or an assisted living's gonna send the referral. We reach out to you, we take care of everything else. Wherever you are, we're gonna find out if you need any hospital or bed DME equipment. Hospice pays for all medical equipment. So you need a hospital bed, you need a shower chair, you need a walker, you need a cane, you need a whatever. That's 100% paid for. Incontinence supplies, 100% paid for. Underneath, we provide all of that stuff. So they send it to us, we set the appointment, we have to have an order from a doctor, so if we don't have one, we'll reach out to your PCP, or our doctor will write it. We come out, we evaluate, if you meet the appropriateness based on your Medicare guidelines, for whatever your disease progress or process is, we can admit you. Now, if you're in a nursing home, sometimes there's many other qualifications, but that we have to look at, but that's neither here nor there, you don't need to worry about it. So it's very easy, my office number is on there, my cell number's on the other, but it's easy, and I have reps out everywhere in the city who work with the buildings, so, and physicians, yes.
So is that medical equipment, is that a one-time thing, or?
It's
let's
whatever you
say
need during the time you're on hospice.
So let's say you go off of hospice, because you graduated.
No,
And then
so
could
you
you-
graduated, then
Then
Medicare won't pay for that equipment. That goes to the patient or the family. But what we do is we call the durable medical equipment companies and we ask them, okay, how can we get this? We need a Hoyer lift. We need a hospital bed. We need a walker. We can usually just transfer billing and get it for a cheaper rate than what you would if you go directly through Medicare, Medicaid to get it.
So the first time you get it, it's covered by Medicare.
100%.
Medicare. And then, but
If you graduate, now, when I say graduate, it is a handful of people who graduate, but we do have them. So it isn't as common, because we're pretty good at what we know where the process and the journey is.
What do they do with the equipment? Like, for instance, I have an uncle in Texas who got all the equipment, but now he's still around, everything's going great, and his daughter says, I wanna move him to Rochester, New York, but moving a hospital bed and all this equipment.
They'll
is
come get it
crazy.
and they can transfer that. If he's on hospice and she
Okay.
wants to move him, then that hospice company will get a contract with another hospice company. They'll take care of all that for you.
Okay, cause
They
she
don't
was
have to do it.
trying to figure out a different bed and everything instead of.
That is
something
why we
like
have
that.
social workers in hospice. They take care of all that.
Okay.
You do not need to take care of those things, especially when you are in a process of grieving and you grieve the entire process. That's not fair. So we make it as easy as possible.
Okay, I will mention that to her, because,
Mhm.
you know, he's doing so much better now that they changed his medications and everything.
Which happens,
And
but
he's
you can
really
still qualify
amazingly better,
for
but
hospice
still
and
needs
feel
to go.
much better.
Okay.
Take advantage. You paid all these years into Medicare. Take advantage of it. It's paid. It's a free service. Don't wait till you are in crisis care and need it in a long-term care facility. Take advantage of it. I mean, people still have their wits. They still can speak. You're not on your deathbed.
Thank you.
So,
Okay, that's good.
Awesome. I've got the balance of my schedule up on the screen. It's also in your handout, and you got a copy of it in the materials that I left at your table. So, are there any other questions before yes?
Just a couple of things. Whether you have your plans in place or not, a few things that are really important to make sure you're in the right place. Make sure that your pre-need plan is irrevocable, so the money can't be touched, okay? Make sure it's guaranteed. When you fund your pre-need policy, the costs get locked in. So the service and the merchandise will never cost more than it does the moment you pay for it. Make sure it's guaranteed. And make sure that your policy is transferable. If you move, the policy moves with you. And it should be a policy that is honored anywhere you move. Okay? So again, if you move to Indiana, your policy moves with you to Indiana, and the guarantees, pricing-wise, move with you as well. Okay? So those are important. Also, we can talk later, but there is a policy that is separate. You don't have to have a pre-need policy or plan in place. If you travel, or if you visit folks out of the area, there is a policy that I can share with you after we're done, that God forbid, if you were to die 75 miles or more away from home, anywhere in the world, outside of 75 miles, the entire cost of bringing you home is covered. So if that's something you need to talk more about, please let me know. Okay?
Thank you. Has everybody filled out their hello form? Because I'm gonna walk around and collect.
I would hear about this